What is a woman? I've been thinking that maybe it's time to answer that question a little more seriously. Not that it wasn't a serious question before, it was one that needed to be asked. But most of us understood, even at the time, that what separated a woman from a man was something much more profound than the way that she dressed or what pronouns she used to describe herself. But we live in a culture that does not actually want us to ask questions in a deep way. If we ask ourselves, what is a woman? Or what is a man? We are shamed for asking that question seriously. Because if you answer it, then that creates a certain box, and maybe everyone doesn't fit perfectly into the box, and then that makes some people feel bad, and so on and so forth, and therefore no one is allowed to ask serious questions. But what are the consequences of that? The consequences of that are that a lot of people out there are lost. They have no idea what direction they are supposed to be heading in as a human being. They have no idea what they should be looking for in a partner. A lot of cosplaying goes on into adopting this identity or that identity, this lifestyle or that lifestyle, and acting it out online for an audience. But how are you actually supposed to live? Being able to answer that question is actually useful. It doesn't mean that the answer traps you. If you don't like the answer, ignore it. And even within the answer, there is a lot of room for individuality. But we have to reach a point where we're able to ask the questions. I was thinking about this week because I've been working on translating Proverbs 31, which is the description of basically the ideal woman. And it's really interesting what is actually in this proverb. But before we start getting into that, sharing with you the interesting things, or at least the things that I found to be interesting, I want to provide a little bit of context, because that in itself is important. This proverb is written by someone who goes by the pen name Lemuel. This is believed to be a pen name for Solomon. And he is merely recording the wisdom that his mother taught to him. So this wisdom was actually written by a woman about women. It's not written by a man about women. Now, there is another theory as to the alternative author, but the point is, no matter who the author is, he says right off the bat that this is what his mother taught him. He is a king, and she is basically pointing out to him that a life of privilege has certain responsibilities. She tells him, yeah, you don't have the luxury of getting drunk, of being a continual drunk. You can't be the guy that's always like, where's the liquor? You're a king. The vulnerable, the needy, the poor, and all of your other citizens look to you for justice. And because you have these responsibilities, you are held to a certain standard. She says to him, give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to him whose life is bitter. Well, the word for perishing there is literally either dying, so like let those who are terminally ill get intoxicated for their pain. Perishing can also mean, in the original Hebrew, vanishing or being lost. People that are just disappearing, entirely lost in their life. Give wine to he whose life is bitter. The word there for life is nephesh. This is also the word for soul. It is your primal essence. So this is someone whose most basic foundational layer is one of defiant resentment. That's their defining trait. That is who they are, just resentful. And it's like, yeah, let them drink and forget who they are. Forget their problems. Forget everything that's lacking from who they are. Everything that's lacking from their life, how impoverished a resentful existence is, how burdensome it is, how destitute it leaves them feeling. A drink will probably do them good. But you are a king. People depend on you. And as a leader, you have certain responsibilities to live up to. That is the deal you are making in becoming a leader. That's why not everyone's cut out to be a leader. If you don't want to make the sacrifices that you are obligated to make as a leader, that is fine. Don't become a leader. The thing that is immoral is to agree to be a leader and then refuse to make the sacrifices that you're supposed to. So I say all of that to point out that the author of this, who again is originally a woman, is not just picking on other women, and she's not just picking on men. She is pointing to these responsibilities and saying, this is the path that your life is on. And so you need to, my son, step up and be this leader that you were born into the position of being. And you need to think about the kind of partner you are going to have, because that's another area that's going to affect other people. It's going to affect the kind of person he is. It's going to affect whether he is having more of himself drained at home and therefore has less to give to his people, whether he's being strengthened at home and therefore has more to give to his people. These are actually good questions to ask ourselves. Relationships shouldn't be something that you just fall into for silly reasons and stay in for even more silly reasons without ever meaning to choose this. Basically, his mother is telling him that as a leader, he is going to need a true helpmate. And even if you're not a leader, as a quality man who is living up to these standards that she's gone over for the man, you would want a quality mate. People want someone who is their match, who is their equal. No one wants to be a parent to their partner. A man does not want to be married to a ditzy airhead, shallow, empty woman with nothing to offer, at least not a quality man. A woman, at least a quality woman, does not want a little boy who's looking for a mommy and has to be taken care of. Most people out there, at least the healthy ones, they want a partner, a helpmate. The Hebrew word for that is ezer kenegdo. Ezer is the word for an ally. And not just any ally, a strong ally. It is a word that is often used for God. It is a strong ally who can come in and save you when you are in trouble, who can be a source of strength to sustain you when life is difficult, who can hold you up, that you can lean on, put your weight on, and vice versa, because allies cut both ways. Kenegdo is a word indicating a matching and complementary counterpart. It's not more of the same. It's an opposite. It's the yin to the yang, but a fitted and matching counterpart that completes the set, making it enhanced and whole, more complete than it could be on its own. So it is this idea of this oppositional but complementary matching counterpart that is also a strong and capable ally. So what does a queen from around 950 BC say that woman looks like? A woman who can actually be a helpmate to a man that is worth having. Today's culture encourages women to be shallow. And I don't say that judgmentally. You can lead your life however you want. They can lead their life however they want. It's not any of my business. I'm merely pointing out a reality that many of the most popular podcasts for women are shallow women giggling as they basically give you advice on the proper techniques for certain sexual acts. That's fine. I'm not saying that offends me. I'm not saying this to be a prude, but the kind of woman that's being described here is a woman that's got more depth than that. And women are not being encouraged to look for more depth than that in themselves. They are being told by a certain group of men and by a certain group of women that that's what they are. They are living sex dolls who are supposed to be shallow and flighty and emotional and irrational, and the only thing they're supposed to take seriously is politics, and even that they're not really supposed to question as an individual. They're supposed to parrot whichever brand of politics they've ended up joining. Okay, a woman with some depth to her has to be more than that. And again, I don't say that as a judgment on other women. Once again, everybody can lead their life however they want to. And if this is not a subject that interests you, more power to you. Go listen to whatever it is that does interest you. I say that with 100% sincerity. This is being said for the group of people who are wanting a little more substance than what they're being offered. And at least there are some branches of men on the internet that are offering that to other men. Some Jordan Petersons and Chris Williamsons and Stephen Bartlett's and people like that who are offering some depth and thought. But there's a real scarcity of that for women. It's scarce for both, but there are at least a few examples for the men. The women don't have hardly any, and they're shamed by other women for saying, yeah, I need more. I need more than just which celebrity is being asked to rate the men that she's slept with in bed this week. That's fine. It's entertainment. You can watch it if you want to. I'm not shaming anyone. I'm just saying that a lot of people out there feel like they're starving on junk food. And hey, junk food tastes good. It's fun. But if you live on a steady diet of it and you never get any steak, you never get any nourishment, you start to get run down. And there's a lot of people out there that are looking for more depth. If you're not one of those people and you're perfectly happy, good. I am honestly glad you're happy. If you're one of the people that's looking for a little bit more depth, okay, well, let's look at what this passage has to say about what a woman with some real depth to her looks like, both so that women have something to aim towards and so that men know what they're looking for. Because remember, this was written by a woman, but it was written by a woman to her son, so that he would know what he should be looking for. It's about standards. Not judgments, but standards. What makes my life better? If you're a woman, what kind of woman do I want to be to make my life better? If you're a man, what kind of a woman do I want to be looking for? Because that's the kind of woman who will make my life better. So the first thing that's said along that line is, an excellent wife who can find, for her worth is far above jewels. This is one of the best examples of all of the meat being lost in translation that I've found yet. So, first of all, the word there for excellent, an excellent woman, an excellent wife. Other translations say a virtuous woman or a virtuous wife. If you were going to put it into one word, the closest translation I've found existing is valiant. Even that falls a little bit short, because the word there is actually the word you would use for a warrior who is really good at what he does, who is very capable of making war, and who is currently armed to do so. That's slightly different than just an excellent wife or even a virtuous wife. What is being described here is a capable woman of valor. One who is armed for life. One who is competent, valiant or courageous. And yes, the virtue is kind of implied on the fringe, but the core is competence. This is a woman who possesses both worth, as in real substance, because that's what worth is indicating in the Bible, and the fortitude to overcome obstacles. So that's the woman that's being described here. And when it's asking, who can find such a woman? The word there is less find as in stumble across, although that is implied. It's more reach, attain. What woman out there can achieve this? What man out there can secure that as a mate? That's being what is asked, because her price, meaning her value, and also it should be noted, a price is a sacrifice you make. You give up your money in order to get something that's worth more. This is a woman who is worth the sacrifice. Her value exceeds rubies and pearls, precious gems in the ancient world. So right off the bat, we're being told what we're looking for and why. That you need to be a woman that has some actual value as opposed to empty entitlement. That value is based on her substance. She is capable. She is armed. She is strong. She has fortitude. She can overcome life's obstacles, because that's a partner, especially in this case, a partner for a king. And then it goes on to say the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. Well, of course his heart trusts in her, because she is capable. She's not a child that he has married and has to coddle and spoil. Although obviously there is love in a relationship and giving and a desire to do so, but it is not a relationship where one of the people in it is a child, either the man or the woman. It's interesting to note that the heart in Hebrew, the lev, you could almost say decisions, because it's not just, we tend to think of heart as being purely your emotions. That is part of it. But in Hebrew, the heart also includes the thoughts, your rational thinking mind. It includes your inclinations, based off of personality, or you could say your desires, the things you want. It also includes your conscience, and it's where all of these places blend to form your will. The heart is the decision-making core. So the decision-making core, the agency of her husband, has confidence in her. The word there for trust is leans his weight on her, knows that she can support that. She is safe to lean on. She's not a rotted piece of wood that's going to break if he leans on it. She is solid and strong, and that is why he can trust her. The gains here, that he will have no lack of gains, gains are the spoils of victory. It literally is plunder. We have a negative connotation with that word, but it was not necessarily negatively associated, although it could be. It depended mainly on the context at this point. But it's the spoils of victory. So, I mean, you could think of that in a lot of men are worried that, especially ambitious men, that if they get into a relationship with a woman, they're very career-minded or something. They're worried they're going to lose their edge. This is basically saying with this kind of a wife, no. No, you're not going to miss out on any conquering. You're not going to miss out on any of life's victories. You're not going to miss out on any of the profits, advantages, spoils, because she is an asset who makes you stronger than you could ever be on your own. What's also interesting here is the word for husband, because in Hebrew, in Genesis, God creates Adam, calls him man, and then he creates woman, calls her woman because she was taken out of man. The word there is, for man, is ish, and Eve is called woman, Isha, because she was taken out of Ish. What's interesting is that both the word Ish and Isha can be translated two ways in English, but it's the same concept in Hebrew. So when you see the word Ish in Hebrew, you have to choose, are you going to translate that as man or as husband? Because in Hebrew, that's the same thing. To be a man is to be a husband. And the same thing with Isha. That can be translated as woman or wife, because in Hebrew, it is the same thing. To be a woman is to be a wife. Man and woman are meant to exist in this harmony. And that's usually the word you will see for husband is ish. That's not the word that's used here. And some people are going to go off on me, but try to set emotions to the side and really hear what's being said here and not what's not being said. So the word that's used here is bal. which can be translated as Lord or Master, but it would be more accurate to translate it as takes or possesses. Now, even with those words, we have some negative connotations to them, but that's what we're bringing to the table. That is not what the text is bringing to the table. So the reason why this word gets translated as husband is because a husband possesses his wife in a physical sense. To say that he takes her. In the Bible, it talks about this man takes a wife. Okay, that's this word. When you're talking about sexually, he takes her. That's this word. It's take in that sense. Sex is not an automatically abusive thing. It is meant to be a consensual thing. And so when we hear possess, we hear possessive, but that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about the unity between them. It is talking about he possesses her in a full and intimate sense as her husband. They are one. It goes on to say she does him good and not evil all the days of her life. To understand what's being said here, you have to understand what good and evil are biblically. So we tend to see good and evil as moral concepts. That is not what they are in Hebrew. Now, there are words for moral and immoral, righteous and unrighteous. So those concepts exist in the Bible. But that's not what is being referred to when the words good and bad are being used. Good is functional. If I say, this is a good spoon, it means that the spoon does what it was created to do. If I say this is a good glass, it means it doesn't leak. It functions in its role. In fact, it functions perfectly in its role, even beautifully in its role. So good is something that is beneficial and functional in a beautiful way that has purpose. It is absolutely fitted to its task, to its purpose, in the way that like a tongue and groove board is fitted together. That is what is being described by good. It is not a moral good. It is functional. So that is what she is doing. She is beneficial to him in a beautiful, life-enhancing way, in a way that makes his life better. Likewise, evil or bad is not, in this case, a moral concept either. It is the opposite of good. It is dysfunctional. It is broken. It is corrupt, as in rotting. A bad piece of fruit is a fruit that is rotting. It's going bad. It's not a moral judgment of the fruit is immoral. No, it's bad. It's not what it's supposed to be. Fruit is supposed to be nourishing. That is rotting. It is dysfunctional. It is broken. She does not bring dysfunction into her husband's life. She does not bring a breaking of their relationship, a breaking of their home. She brings beneficial, functioning, life-enhancing qualities to their life together. All the days, and the word for all in Hebrew, kol, is the word for all, every, the whole. It carries the connotation of completeness of their life. And the Hebrew word for life is also a really cool one because it's more than just, I'm alive, I'm not dead, I'm living. It is a vibrant life. It is a multifaceted life. And it is an interconnected life. In fact, the word life does not exist in the singular in Hebrew. It's lives. And that is interpreted as a fundamental implication that life cannot be experienced in its full vibrancy and vitality and flourishing alone. It's always an interconnected thing. And in that interconnected relationship, she is bringing benefit, function, not dysfunction. It goes on to describe lots of other abilities when it comes to her ability to run a household, to assign tasks, to portion out food, to make sure everyone is cared for. Go down a little bit of ways, and it says, she girds herself with strength and makes her arm strong. Girding was literally talking about here like a girdle that would have wrapped around the waist to bind her clothes out of her way so that she can move through the world. It would have extended from the waist down through the hips. And it's saying that she is girded in that way with strength. This is Oz, as the same word that is often used for a city, especially a city with walls. So this is a fortified strength. She binds that kind of fortified strength to herself. She surrounds herself in that fortified strength as she moves through the world, making it central to her protective preparations for engaging in the world. Clothing is symbolic in Scripture because it's from the Garden of Eden on. It is covering your nakedness. It is protecting you from exposure. So her fortitude is her protection. Keeps her from being exposed. It keeps her from being shamed. The idea that she makes her arms strong indicates the effort that she is putting in. There is strain implied in that word, as well as courage and determination. And it's an ongoing process. It's not a one-time event that she did this thing, as in she planted a vineyard and now the vineyard is there. This is a continuous action. She is continually putting in the effort and courage and determination to make her arms, which are used symbolically to represent agency and your capabilities, strong, in this case, unyielding. The word we would typically use would be firm. So she is actively realizing that these things, these virtues, these qualities of her require maintenance. They don't maintain on their own. She is reinforcing her own determination and resolve in executing the things that she is capable of. That being represented by the arms, because the arms are the instrument of agency. She is exhibiting not an empty can-do frivolity, but a grounded can-do strength that is not built on self-esteem, as in, if you believe it, it is true, but is grounded in reality. It's something that she lives out and acts on daily. She is not shying away from the heavy lifting that is required by life. The next verse is, she senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. They use the word sense there because the literal word is taste. And that doesn't quite translate into English in a way that we understand. But to taste something is to experience it and to assess it, to evaluate it, in order to discern if her trades, her deals, her interactions with others, and the profits that she's making are good. And once again, good is not moral. Good is beneficial. Is my approach to life working? She actually stops and evaluates that. She is self-aware. She is not just, well, this is the ideology I prefer, and this is the strategy that I think should work, and regardless of the results, I'm going to continue doing it. She's able to stop and self-assess. Her lamp doesn't go out at night. A lamp was something that had to be prepared. This referred to either a candle, which you would have had to have made from wax, or a small portable oil lamp that you would have had to make sure was filled and ready for the night. And hers does not go out in the night, in the darkness. So we're being told she's not ideologically attached to her own opinions. She assesses herself to determine, is my approach beneficial? Is it making life better for me? Is it making life better for my family? Is it making life better for my partner? Is it making life better for the people beyond that I'm interacting with? She's not attached to doing things her way. She's attached to doing things the beneficial way. She assesses the results. She discerns and judges the significance and meaning of those results and savors the benefits when they are exactly what they were intended to be, when they are good. This is what I meant for that thing to be. When I designed it in my head, when I designed a spoon, this is what I wanted. It functions perfectly. And because she is self-assessing, because she is not wed to doing things her way, because she's insecure enough to need to be on a power trip at all times, because she can stop and assess the results, that leads to a kind of productivity that is enlightened. And therefore it does not burn out, it does not consume itself or get snuffed out by outside forces during dark times. Because she is not someone who depletes herself, goes out is, when it says her lamp does not go out in darkness, goes out, can refer to being snuffed out, but typically it means you ran out of fuel. You consumed yourself. She is someone who does not deplete herself by stubbornly continuing to do things that don't work, or by continuing to engage in pursuits or behaviors that are dysfunctional. She is assessing things for the good, for the functional, for the beneficial. She is result-oriented, not ideologically devoted, and not someone with such a fragile, insecure ego that she needs the successful way to be her idea in order to be able to cope with it. It says she extends her hands to the poor and stretches out her hands to the needy. The word there for hand is actually the word for palm. So it's your open hand, your grip. And the needy there are those enduring miserable hardship, the downtrodden, specifically the suffering poor. This is not somebody who just has a little less money than you, who's kind of on a tight budget. This is not about relative poverty. As in, they're not Elon Musk. They actually have a lot, especially compared to the rest of the world, but, there's people that have a lot more than them. No, this is talking about the suffering poor. The second part, that she stretches out her hand to the needy, this is an active agency. This is deploying her hands, her work, her agency on behalf of the needy. And this is the word for the entirely reliant, destitute beggar who has nothing and is longing for any form of relief. Using the term over and over again, she stretches out, is the same sort of word you would use in Hebrew for throwing out a tablecloth or spreading out a tent. It's indicating that she's expanding her work, her capabilities to encompass the suffering, gripping them in her hands. She is strong enough to help them. She deploys her agency, not in virtue signaling, in tangible ways that truly benefit and raise up the beggars that are pleading for help. And it should be noted here that the raising up part is critical to this, because in Hebrew, the idea of charity is not a handout. In Hebrew, the idea is that true charity has to elevate the recipient towards the dignity of self-sufficiency, dooming them to a perpetually inferior position of dependency that allows them to have no self-worth, self-respect, pride, etc., just so that the do-gooder can permanently play hero and feel good about themselves, even though them feeling good about themselves comes at the expense of the person that they're keeping in a permanently bad situation by not offering them real help that is a hand up, not a hand out. That's not charity, at least not in the biblical sense of the words that are used in the Bible. Biblical charity has to elevate the recipient. That's what she's doing. She's not posting hashtags. She is getting out there and rolling her hands up to help the people in her immediate vicinity, not on the other side of the world. She doesn't have access to those people. The people down the street, the people in her city, rolling up her sleeves in real ways to help them in a teach a man to fish kind of a way, instead of a give a man a fish kind of a way. Now sure, sometimes while you're teaching him to fish, you have to give him a fish so that he doesn't starve today, he makes it till tomorrow. But the trend should be towards self-sufficiency. You should never enable under the guise of charity. She understands the difference, and she is elevating these people to be able to get up from the state that they find themselves in, possibly through oppression, possibly through something that has nothing to do with them, maybe something that has to do with them, but either way, helping them have the dignity, giving them a hand, pulling them up from a seated position in the dirt to a standing position on the path that enables them to get to the same place she's at, where they can help others, they can be self-sufficient. This one was interesting because it says she is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. The word there for house indicates both the shelter of the home and the household, as far as the people in it. Bet indicates both the house and a household. And when it comes to her house, snow does not produce the effect of overwhelming her with a paralyzing dread. That's what fear is. It's being overwhelmed with a paralyzing dread. When it's used in a positive sense, like the fear of the Lord, it's being overwhelmed with a visceral awe. So there's a subtle difference there. There's a range to the word. But when it's being used negatively, dread is more accurate than awe, but it's a paralyzing awe or a paralyzing dread. What we would typically call today being overwhelmed with anxiety. She doesn't deal with that. She does not end up being overwhelmed by her anxiety because her entire household, all of them, again, it's the word kol, all, the whole household, are clothed in scarlet. There's a little debate about the root of this word. So, either way, it has an interesting connotation. Scarlet would have been a high-quality luxury. Scarlet dye, crimson dye, was one of the most expensive dyes. This indicates that her household is doing very well. That not just her, but her entire household, her children, her husband, the servants who work for her, everyone under her responsibility has the luxury of this clothing. The other root of it indicates double, which would make even more sense because in snow you're going to need double layers. So this is saying that basically either way you look at it, they are well cared for. They're wrapped in double layers of warm luxury and status symbol clothing. She's not paralyzed by anxiety in the face of the predictable cycles of life. Snow is predictable. Winter follows summer. Doesn't mean that nothing ever gets to her. But when it comes to the predictable cycles of life and the hardships that you know are coming, you can see them coming down the road, she's not paralyzed with anxiety in the face of those because she saw them coming. And while they were still coming, she used her agency to prepare ahead of time, ensuring that her family, her entire household, everyone that's dependent on her, had multiple thick layers to protect them, keeping them warm, and even going above and beyond that to ensure that those layers were of the highest quality, and investing in that extra expense. It's basically indicating here that both preparation and agency are the vaccine that you inject yourself with ahead of time to protect against paralyzing fear. It says a little bit later on, her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Okay, once again, this is the slightly less common word for husband. It's again takes. So it's basically the husband who possesses her in this intimate way. They are one. Has become known in the societal gates. When he gets to take a seat, a permanent seat, this is also the word for like reside, dwell. So it's a permanent association with the elders, the aged men who are revered, mature, and experienced. What is this indicating? This is indicating that other men look at the quality of his mate in this amazing woman, and they recognize the quality of man that it would take to end up successfully possessing such a wife. And from there, the qualities of that man will, the ones that he has in himself, will be discovered. Important men will have their attention seized and then be made aware of his quality. And he will be recognized for what he brings to the table. He will be respected and valued as a part of the council that everyone in that society looks to for overseeing and judging the entire society. This woman is truly a partner and a helpmate who shoulders her share and creates the stability in both the relationship and the home, in any of the ways that she is pulling her weight. And I mean, we haven't gone into all of them, but I mean, it discusses a whole range of things that she's doing, all of which free her husband to do his own productive things, because he's not running around putting out fires and micromanaging both their life together and trying to benefit the community. He's not in a relationship where he's in it alone, because she can't be depended on as a true partner. This is not that. She is an asset in every area of his life, and others notice that and are impressed, and that in and of itself opens doors for him where his qualities can also be valued and seen. Because this kind of woman is not going to be reached, as we talked about in the first verse, attained by someone who's not a partner to her. No, we're kind of running a little bit longer. There's just a couple of more verses that I want to cover. It says, strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. Once again, this is Oz, like for a city. This is fortified strength and a majestic splendor, a beautiful dignity are her attire. The word here gets translated as clothing, but it's a slightly more formal word than the word that is typically used for clothing, so it would be kind of like attire, formal attire. And smiles at the future is not entirely accurate. It's not inaccurate, but it's leaving out a big part of the picture. Laughs with exuberance is a little bit closer, but really the word here is play. When it comes to the days that lie ahead of her and their outcomes, their conclusion, when it comes to new chapters and their ends, she heads towards that in a spirit of joyful play. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. Wisdom in the Proverbs is chokmah. This is constructive skill. This is curiosity that is always questioning in the world, but with a productive aim. It's not just asking questions. It's asking questions so that you can arrive at constructive answers. It is a skillful constructiveness. And on her tongue being a representation of language, it's why, like in the New Testament, they spoke in tongues, meaning they spoke in foreign languages, is the guiding law, the Torah. It's a guiding law because the root of that word is to shoot, to fire towards a target. So it is the teaching that guides you to the mark basically what you would call directions of not just kindness, but hesed, loving kindness. And that's an action-oriented covenant bond, loyal love, that being the key. Out of all the different kinds of love, this is the loyal love. This is the committed devotion that does not waver or fail in its generous grace. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. The word here for look is more than look. It's keeping watch, or really even more scouting ahead. The ways of her household would really be more like the progress of her household. She is observing, watching over, anticipating, and predicting the behavior and movements of her home. And she responds to that. She does not consume the bread of laziness and inertia. She recognizes that she is not a sloth in a tree, and she refuses to try to futilely sustain herself on the empty nourishment of being unproductive, just to avoid the exertion of effort. She knows that that is not a strategy to getting anywhere, and she does not allow herself to engage in that. Her children rise up and bless her, her husband also, and he praises her, saying, we'll cycle back to that in just a second. The word there for children is actually sons. So in being this example, just as a mother is saying all of this advice to her son, of son, this is the kind of woman you want. And he's listening to her and remembering, because years later he's writing this down to pass it on to us. A virtuous woman has an impact on her sons. And the word here for bless would really be admire. It's approval, validation, or, because that word has kind of been hijacked in our society, I would say confirmation, and recognition of the truly enviable fulfillment that she has brought, and a blessing of happiness, what we would call being fortunate. They admire her because of a recognition of how fortunate they are. By being a woman who is truly worthy of admiration, she has set her own sons up for flourishing relationships, because they can recognize what is valuable in a woman, and they have healthy priorities and criteria to look for. They're rising up in acknowledgement. They're rising up in recognition. Again, this is the husband who possesses her. He does the same too. And when it says that he praises her, the word there is boast. It's the beginning of the word hallelujah. To use the word hallelujah is to boast of Yahweh. Well, this is hallelujah without the yah. It's not boasting of Yahweh, it is boasting of his wife, saying, many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. And we'll cycle back around to that in just a second. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she will be praised. Okay, so the word there is the word for charm, but it indicates a bunch of things. It indicates approval, and in this context, unearned approval. The unearned approval of charm. People who are naturally charming, they haven't really earned the approval they receive. We just naturally give it to them because we're drawn to that. They are the beneficiaries of a generous goodwill that is the result of their appeal. It's saying that the attractiveness of being pleasing is a misleading measurement. It's deceiving. It's groundless. Deceitful there is basically groundless. It will not hold up. And the awe or admiration of beauty is worthless and empty. It is futile and meaningless. The word there is smoke or a breath of air. It's an elusive and ephemeral mist that vanishes into the ether as the wind blows it away and disperses it, like your cold breath into your warm breath into the cold air of winter. You see it for a second and poof, it's gone. That's what it's saying. Beauty is an illusion without any substance to it, and so it is going to vanish by its very nature. But a woman, Isha, once again, a woman is a wife. A wife is a woman who has a visceral awe for Yahweh. This is describing not just the wonder, but also an active, reverent deference for Yahweh, basically meaning the existing of all existence, would be basically the translation of I am what I am. Having a reverential deference for that produces actions that honor something that awesome. By that I don't mean cool, I mean massive, that incomprehensible. A woman who is able to keep her grasp on that, to maintain her grasp on that kind of awe and let that be the driving force behind her actions, she will be truly praised, not the kind of admiration in the first part of the verse for charm and beauty that is going to vanish, but this is a true praise. She will be celebrated herself. In her awe for Yahweh, she will have a worthiness to her that radiates, boasts, giving her not only the true recognition of others, as opposed to the fleeting kind that is empty, that was described earlier in the verse, but also giving her a stable self-worth, which is indicated by the word herself. So it's not just that others are praising her, but she can honestly feel good about herself because she knows that she has worth. Not, I'm going to say it to myself in affirmations in the mirror, deep down knowing it's not true. Now, it's fine to do that if it is true, and you just have trouble giving yourself any sort of credit. But if it's not true, and your actions don't match up with the affirmations you're saying in your mirror, well, then there's a problem. The fear of the Lord is what leads to her living out the kind of life in which she can look herself in the mirror and know that she has real substance, real self-worth. And the last verse is, give her the product of her hands and let her works praise her in the gates. The word give there is given in the command form. This is an order. Give! Exclamation point. The produce of her hands is indicating not all of it, but a share of the fruits that were produced by her hands or the outcomes of her agency. Give her her rightful share of what she has created. You're supposed to give that to her. That is a command. Her actions, her work, her creations testify to her worth. They will continually, radiantly boast of her in the societal gates. Gates were courts where people were judged. They were marketplaces. They were the points of entry into the city. They were vital in every way. They were the heart of society. And in that place, her actions, her work, her creations will speak for her as radiant boasts. Final point I want to make before we go, and I know I've run over here, but it is important to point out that this chapter can be misused to basically say, okay, here's a to-do list of all of the industrious things that a woman's supposed to do. She's supposed to sew, and she's supposed to churn butter, and she's supposed to plant a garden, and okay, this has way more depth to it than that. It's fine if you want to read it on that level, but it has way more depth to it than that. If what makes a woman a wife worthy is just her housekeeping skills, then explain the story of Mary and Martha and Bethany in Luke 10, verses 38 through 42, because Martha was being the homemaker. She was doing all of the tasks, and she got angry at her sister for not helping. And Jesus said, Martha, you're concerned about a lot of things. You got a lot on your plate, and I understand. But Mary has chosen the thing that's more valuable. Okay, so this is not just a to-do list of homemaking skills. There is much more than just a list of trad wife, whatever, that is being taught here. When you're looking at the summary of what makes this woman have a value that is far above rubies, at the end right there, it cycles around to her spiritual life in verse 30, that it is the fear of the Lord, which is what Jesus was saying. Mary has chosen the better share, the good portion, the more functional share, which will not be taken away from her. So we'll cycle back around to that in a moment. I want to continue on this one other point. The verse that we skipped over, many daughters have done nobly and well, but you excel them all. I mean, stop and think about what her husband is actually saying there. You excel them all, each and every one. I mean, think about the women who had come in the Old Testament. There's Miriam, Moses' sister, who led the women of Israel in praise to God in Exodus 15. Deborah, the patriotic military advisor and judge of her people in Judges 4. Ruth, the great-grandmother of King David, whose devotion to her widowed mother-in-law is one of the most beautiful stories in the Bible. Hannah, who is held up as an incredible mother who wanted her son so much and yet gave him to God. The hospitable Shulamite woman in 2 Kings 4, although that would be after this proverb was written most likely. I mean, also this would be after, but Queen Esther, a woman who risked her life to save her people. In what way does this virtuous wife excel all of those women, surpass them? The key to that is found in her source, that she fears the Lord. That is the source of everything she is praised for, because it gives her the proper perspective, and that is the guiding force of her actions. That is what permeates every area and relationship of her life. It is an echo of what Christ is talking about later when he says, of all of the men who have ever been born of women, John the Baptist is the greatest. He had the most important job as the herald of the Messiah. And yet, even the least of these is greater than him. Because it's not the size of your job. It's not the size of the role that you were given to play. It's how extensively you live it out in the intimate proximity of your minute-to-minute life. It doesn't matter if your role was to be Esther, a big role, or if your role is to be this kind of a woman, whether it's as a wife or not as a wife, as just a woman in the world. It's about how intensely are you filling your role. It's not about how big was the role. In 2 Peter chapter 1, starting in verse 5, it says, now for this very reason also, applying all diligence in your faith, supply moral excellence, and in your moral excellence, knowledge, and in your knowledge, self-control, and in your self-control, perseverance, and in your perseverance, godliness, and in your godliness, brotherly kindness, and in your brotherly kindness, love. For if these qualities are yours and are increasing, they render you neither useless nor unfruitful in the true knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. For he who lacks these qualities is blind or short-sighted, having forgotten his purification from his former sins. Therefore, brethren, be all the more diligent to make certain about his calling and choosing you. For as long as you practice these things, you will never stumble. For in this way, the entrance into the eternal kingdom of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ will be abundantly supplied to you. This woman is displaying all of those qualities, and the source is exactly what it says it is. It is a reverent and worshipful awe for the source, the beginning, the best part of wisdom, as it says in Proverbs 9:10, is the fear of the Lord. It is the foundation for a life which is valued by God, and everything flows from there. And her husband sees that value, sees what she has brought to his life, and is seeing himself as truly fortunate in having this helpmate who has brought so much to his life. That's why her worth is far above rubies or pearls, as it says in verse 10. That is the source of her substance. Now, it's not the beginning and end of it. It produces something. So it's not like, okay, you can say, I have awe for God, therefore task over. This is an awe for God that inspires you to live. It's an awe for God that is so profound that it inspires you to live in these ways, especially when it comes to our relationships with others. If she lives with a true awe of the source of life, she is not going to devalue and squander her own. Her industry is not what makes her an incredible woman. She is industrious because she is an incredible woman. Her virtue is the source, not the label that gets attached for a job well done. And her virtue comes directly from her wisdom, which is a result of starting from a profound level of awe for God, for the source of life, as it says in verse 30. And even though this chapter is describing a woman of worth, you have to bear in mind that it was first and foremost written for young men. It is a mother's God-given task to model this for her sons, to display and pass on verbally this information to young men, letting them grow up with these healthy standards as part of their consciousness. So, if you're a woman, start with discovering a profound awe for the source of substance. If you're a young man and you're looking for a good woman, or like I said, if you're looking to become a good woman, start there. Start by looking for someone who has an active awe for the source of life, because the rest, if that is true, the rest will naturally follow from there. Whereas if you look for the actions, the trad wife in the poodle skirt and pearls, without the source to sustain those actions, they may very well collapse. Same thing if you're a woman trying to figure out your place. And like I said, within these standards, there is a wide variety for all different types of women. There's thousands of different ways you can live out the things we discussed today. There's not just one pattern. But these are the guidelines of what each of those 1,000 different ways should be aiming towards. If you're looking to be a woman of substance, and you just try to start with the outward actions, if there's nothing behind it to sustain it, they're probably going to collapse at one point or another. Now, that's not to say don't start living out the actions till you get yourself perfect on the inside, because that day ain't ever coming. It's a dual process. You're doing both. But you better be building that inner life. because that's what's going to fuel the outer actions that make you valuable to the people around you, whether that is to a partner or whether that is to your friends and family members, your community, to yourself, to everyone. And I'm assuming if you've made it this far in, you're probably not one of the people who was only looking for fluff and girls just want to have fun. Not that there's anything wrong with fun. We're allowed to have fun. We don't need to be sticks in the mud, and that is what is so often frustrating about religious people, is that they seem to think that there is something inherently virtuous about being uptight. There's not. But this idea that women are supposed to be shallow in everything they do, in their entertainment, in their reading, in their thoughts, in their pursuits, even in things like their compassion. It's supposed to be all surface level. It's not supposed to be deep and meaningful. Charity is not about getting out in your community and rolling up your hands to help people like we've talked about today. It's about posting the right hashtag online. It's about who did you vote for? Who cares who you voted for? Your vote is your business. That's something that happens once every 4 years. Who are you chanting for, in this conflict on the other side of the world, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, the Palestinians? What about what's happening around you? Because it's real easy. And I'm not saying we shouldn't care about those things. I care very much about those things. I speak about them often. There's nothing wrong about caring about those things. But if you care about those things instead of caring about the people that are around you, that's just shallowness. Because it's easy to care about things that actually have nothing to do with you. And I give you enough credit to assume that, like me, you actually care about the people that are involved. You recognize that they're human beings. But even so, your responsibility lies in the people that you can actually help. Speak out, yes, but your focus should primarily be on those around you, on the relationships you're in. And we need to learn to start selecting mates on a much more serious level. People want to talk about why the divorce rates are what they are. It's because of not being at all serious about it. You just fall backwards into it. You date somebody with all of the signs telling you this not only is not someone who's going to benefit your life, be good, as in functional, and that doesn't mean that they don't have value as a human being. Of course they do. But this is not somebody that's going to be a partner to you. This is someone who's going to be a project. And this is not somebody who is going to enhance your life. This is someone who's going to detract from your life. They've got maybe active ongoing drug issues. They're cheaters. They're whatever. And you're just supposed to go along with all that. And you move in and you're already kind of living together and you go ahead and buy a house, and now you're really stuck because you can't really afford to live someplace else. It'll be a hassle to try to sell the home and divide it up. Now you've slept walk yourself into a marriage. The most important decision of your life, you just slept walk into it. And we wonder why these relationships are not working out. And also, everybody loves to have a long list of what they're looking for. Women out there especially, but men do it too. This long list of what they want from their partner. How about this? For every trait you write down that you want from your partner, you have to write down the equivalent trait in you. You want him to be earning this minimum. Okay, that goes on your side too. You want him to be in peak physical condition. Okay, that goes on your side too. You want him to have a PhD. Okay, your education better be pretty high too. Same thing for guys. You want them to be Susie Homemaker or whatever it is. Okay, put the complementary skill on your side, because the people that are the Superman and Superwoman that you're describing, they've got their pick of the litter. Okay, they do. And they should. They're bringing an awful lot to the table. What are you bringing to the table that's going to make somebody like that choose somebody like you? That's not me saying you don't have worth. Of course you have worth. But like tends to mate with like. You typically don't see huge disparities in these areas, even in physical attractiveness, unless you're talking about money or something like that compensating for it. You know, when you see a beautiful young woman married to an unattractive 80-year-old guy, well, we know what she's doing with him. She sees a big will and a short lifespan. But apart from just using people like that, like mates with like. So we all have to be willing to look in the mirror and say, what kind of person do I want to be? What do I value in others? What am I looking for in a mate? What is of real substance? What's going to make my life better? What to me is a real man? What to me is a real woman? What is that real man or that real woman going to be looking for in a mate? And how do I turn myself into that? I know today went really long. If you're still here, hey, I appreciate you. You are a champ. I would ask one last thing of you, to please click the like and subscribe button, because that's what makes these things successful. And I'm trying to be not famous, not, competing top 10 worldwide podcasts. That ain't in the package for me. But be moderately successful, enough to where it makes sense to keep going because it's doing some good in somebody's life. That's the goal. So if you would please help me out with that, I would appreciate it. And I hope I will see you next week. Have a good week. Have a good life.